Welcome to How to Draw Anything on this Tuesday tutorial with Rufusman. So we're going to just go over a little few things on just what could be helping our artists level up. And we're going to start off with a very important concept that I feel can help change the game for a lot of emerging artists that might be feeling a little frustrated with trying to get things down the way they want, right? So we're going to go over what I like to call wireframes, okay? Now, wireframes are essentially like the bones of any drawing, the structure underneath what you typically might see, like a skeleton, okay? Here I am drawing a quick little skeleton that is essentially a stick figure, but a stick figure that follows the actual structure underneath. So, for example, the arms and legs don't stick right out of the middle line or the spine. They actually have two lines, the shoulder line and the hip line, and that's where our legs and arms come from, okay? And from this structure, once we have those rib cages and those hip bones in a certain spot, we can then start to construct something over this skeleton. Okay, that's going to feel more natural, right? And the red color could be replaced with a pencil or a different marker, but either way, once you've got that structure doing its job, then you can build on top of it and you can modify and add details, right? But you still need that wireframe. And this applies to all different kinds of things, okay? I mean, we think about different shapes that are one-dimensional, okay? What a wireframe helps us do is turn these one-dimensional objects into something, or even two-dimensional objects into a 3D object, okay? Something in three-dimensional space, okay? So a square becomes a cube, a triangle becomes a pyramid, a circle becomes a sphere. And then when we add a little bit of shading or highlights, all of a sudden it looks more like in 3D space. Wireframes take the 2D into 3D, okay? Very important thing to remember. And as you start using this, you can actually use this for all kinds of things, all kinds of objects. All of a sudden, a square becomes a box, and a box can then be joined with another box, okay? And all of these boxes can come together, kind of like a cardboard box as a kid when you were playing pretend. Well, you're kind of building these cardboard boxes into more complex objects, like an automobile. Okay, and with that structure you put in place, then you can actually add the body on top, or the skin, right? Which I'm using the blue to kind of help demonstrate. But in all reality, that could be, the structure could be pencil, and then what you use on top of that could be marker or ink, something that's permanent. Okay, then you can erase the pencil, and then you're left with the detailed, very fine-lined drawing on top, thanks to our lovely wireframe. And then we can add all kinds of different cool details, even like a spoiler. I mean, you can really go nuts, and add a sense of realism to that two-dimensional shape. This principle also applies to animals of all kinds. You still have to form a wireframe to get the proportions right. Okay, to get the shape right. And, some wireframes are going to be a little different, right? Because dogs have a little different structure than maybe we do, but they still have a skeleton. And with that skeleton, you can add what's on top, which is the drawing you wanted to draw in the first place. But that wireframe helps plant it in three-dimensional space, helps you get all of the proportions right, all of the, the things the way you want it before you actually commit to something more permanent, okay? Now with that wireframe, you can also, play with once again, we talked about proportion. Well, you can basically tweak, for example, the size of the head in proportion to the rest of the body. Okay. So in this case, we can make, a smaller dog, and, the head is much bigger than the rest of the body. And, it's still following the same wireframe that will tell us at the end that this is another dog. It just has a different sort of frame. It's a different proportion. It's a smaller, cute little dog, or, like a little chihuahua. With the wireframe, you can be able to create all types of cool stuff, big or small. Even like a spaceship. Okay, stuff that may not even exist yet, except in your imagination. You take different shapes with your wireframe, and then you sketch it out. One of the big things to keep in mind are planes. I'm not talking about the kind of plane like an airplane. I'm talking about a plane as in a surface area, right? It's kind of a direction, right? Keeping things on the same direction line or plane helps things appear more three-dimensional. For example, the two wing engines on the side of this flying spaceship, right? They are following the same direction lines or planes. And then from there, we have a more realistic three-dimensional looking object that we can then add extra details to and swoosh through the page. Wireframes can also be used for buildings. Okay, now, these might seem a little bit more complex, and I'm not going to lie, they aren't my favorite things to draw compared to, animals or spaceships or other stuff. But they are still following the same principles of using shapes in the right way that still conveys this three-dimensional feeling, okay? Now, obviously, there's going to be different things to learn. Like perspective plays a huge part in how we draw buildings. But it still follows the same principle of having a structure underneath that we then can draw on top and add additional details or even change some of the details. Like, for example, I'm going to switch out the window design and do something a little different, right? That wireframe gives you the opportunity to have more choices and to make changes as you see fit along the way. You're not necessarily tied to one specific design from the get-go. You're able to revise or change as you're sketching until you get to something that you feel, okay, I can now add more details with, and I feel like it's telling a good story or it's getting the results I want. And this is, once again, a simple concept that can make all the difference in the world with your drawing. Maybe you never thought of yourself like a construction worker or someone that's actually building a drawing. But that's really what you're doing when you use wireframes and shapes and perspective and planes and other types of techniques to get across the impression or the illusion of a face or a dog, a building, a spaceship, a planet. Whatever you want to draw, it's all within your grasp as you practice with these wireframes and understand that everything is made of shapes. Everything is made of lines or planes or space. And how we use that determines a lot of how our drawings will end up. So, not to say that you have to necessarily draw everything accurately. Like, you can have fun with things. You can stretch things. You can squash things. But either way, wireframes are what build it all. All right? So thank you guys so much for checking out this video. Hopefully it's been helpful. We're going to do more tutorials like this. Please let me know in the comments what sort of things you'd like to learn how to draw. Just remember, no matter how many tricks or tips you learn, there's no substitute for daily practice. Keep drawing as much as you can. Ideally, every day. The more you draw, the more fun you're going to have. The more fun you have, the better you'll get. And that's just a general thing in life. So, thanks so much for watching, everybody. Please like and subscribe, share, and have yourself a wonderful day. We'll see you next time.